What's up, everybody? Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, doing a little walk and talk after 2 Arkansas football practices this spring. Practice field's right over there. Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium right over here. So what have we learned so far? By the way, want to mention this. HawgSports is just $1 right now for your first month. HawgSports.com. A great deal, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, your #1 insider source on Arkansas sports and recruiting and transfer portal, of course. Got to include that now. And the good thing about the $1 deal, if you sign up, you like it, you go on the full price plan, you get Paramount Plus for absolutely free. So sign up, support what we do. We really appreciate that. So I figure we'll just kind of go position by position a little bit. I know a lot of people are wondering about the newcomers, what we think of them. The guy that jumps off the page to me is Shaq McCroy. I mean, he's bigger than I thought he would be. Like, I knew he was going to be big, but he is the biggest offensive lineman that I've covered in 21 or 22 years, I guess, of doing this. He's listed at 6'8". Like, Marion Harris is tall, but Marion Harris is 6'7". And this dude looks 2 or 3 inches taller. He's just massive. He's just different than everybody. And he's going to start at right tackle. He may be working with the second team for the most part. He did see a little bit of, today's day 2 though, he did see a little bit of action with the first team today. But eventually, he's going to work at right tackle, starting first team. I would be stunned. I can't imagine it was cheap to get him here, and he's just so huge. He's just different than everybody. And I think that maybe you look at considering maybe moving to Marion Harris inside. Fernando Carmona, it does feel like he's a guard and not a center, just kind of working at center. You know, you'll see him probably coming out on game days and snapping with the centers, but never playing there unless there's some kind of situation that, you know, where they have to change things around. Probably going to end up being Caden Kittler at center, who's not a huge guy, 6'3", 307, something like that. Not huge, but a guy that started 11 games in the Big 12 last year as a sophomore, started 5 games as a freshman the year before. So I think there's still a lot to determine at the guard spots, but man, McCroy, I would just be really stunned if it doesn't end up being him as one of the starters. I really like what we've seen from Corey Robinson. Corey Robinson sticks at left tackle. I would be very surprised if he doesn't stick there, and he's been working with the first group also. I'll say this, like, when you talk about the second team offensive line compared to last year, dramatically better. It's a dramatically better offensive line. How much better is the first group? I do think they're going to be better. Now, are we talking about a group that's going to be good? Are we talking about a group that's going to be average by SEC standards? Either way, I think they're an improvement from last year based on what I've seen so far. You know, Taylor Green's throwing the ball well. He's, to me, a little bit different than all the other quarterbacks. Physically, his size, his velocity, obviously his understanding of the offense. I've come away these first couple days, again, these guys are in shorts, not even shoulder pads, helmets and stuff. They get pretty physical out there. It's a lot easier to tell what's going on offense than on defense, like who's good and stuff. But I do feel like they have a chance to have a quality offense. I really do. Mike Washington looks better than what I thought. A little bit of a top-heavy kind of back. Reminds me a little bit of Brandon Holmes from back in 2000. That kind of build. Muscled up dude. Bigger than I thought he was going to be. Faster than I thought he was going to be. So I think you probably feel good about him based on how he looks running around out there, and looks pretty physical, catches the ball pretty naturally also. So if you can have him and Braylon Russell as a 1-2, and Russell down to 238, lost 15 pounds, he looks a little trimmer. You know, if you can have that behind what I think is going to be a better offensive line overall, I think you got a running game going. You got Taylor who can run also. And let's not forget A.J. Green. I mean, A.J.'s capable of running for 400 plus yards in the SEC. We've seen that. So encouraging things on offense. You know, the guys as far as the newcomers who jump out to me, I mentioned Shaq, I mentioned Mike Washington. Rohan Jones at tight end, to me, is like, I feel like they stole this guy or something. From Montana State, obviously very productive. We're talking about the FCS level, Division I AA. To me, like 6'2", 6'3", huge triceps, huge thighs, really put together, fast. I've been impressed with him, especially day one. Day one, him and Shaq McCroy were probably my 2 standouts. And Mike Washington, I guess it's the same thing as it was back then when you're talking about offensive side of the ball. Wide receiver, to me, the most active guy so far has been Ismail Cisse, a guy that when they signed him, I thought, why are they getting this guy? They're bringing in a fifth transfer wide receiver. It just feels like an add-on. But to me, he's been the most productive guy out there through 2 days. Just seems to catch everything that's thrown at him. Very productive, good-looking wide receiver. I could see catching a lot of passes for him this year, actually. Haven't seen Courtney Crutchfield just like, pop yet. Physically, he looks great, but I haven't seen him, do the things that you would think like a top 50 type of player would do. He could still be feeling his way around a little bit. Obviously, some of these other guys are a little bit older. Raylan Sharp has been very productive. Cam Shanks has been very productive. Those are probably the three right now. Omeka Blake has done some things, but to me, the three that I mentioned, Shanks, Raylan Sharp, and Ismail Cisse are the top three wide receivers, and then Rohan Jones at tight end. Now, as far as the newcomers, like Monte Harrison has looked pretty good out there so far. Shamar Easter's done some good things as well. So kind of my overview on the offense right now. Defense, it's just a little bit harder to tell. Day one on HawgSports, I did this long breakdown of everybody on offense, and I had plenty to say about every single player. But then I got to defense, and I was just like, man, I can't publish this. There's just not enough here. Plus, I went back and looked at like my photos and stuff, and what I noticed is I had no players on defense in the photos. So I spent a little bit more time today checking out the defense. I like Keyshawn Davila, I believe that's how you say it, the transfer or the junior college transfer. He was like the top junior college cornerback transfer in the country. He's thin. Like he's thin, but he is aggressive. He's fast. He's worked some at the nickel spot. He's worked some at cornerback. Felt like he had a really good first day. He doesn't talk a lot. Like he's not talking a lot of noise out there. I don't know if that'll change, when he gets into it a little bit more. But I did notice that about him. So I think that he ends up starting for them probably at one of those spots. Now, we've also seen Larry Worth work at safety, work at nickel. Shelton, the high school linebacker who's 200, he's been working primarily at nickel. But I could see Davila working at nickel and starting there, and it could depend on some other things. I think Miguel Mitchell's a starter at safety. Not that Quintavious Scandard hasn't done some good things or looked pretty good out there running around. Caleb Wooden, the transfer from Auburn, obviously played a lot for Auburn last year. Not as big as those other guys, but he could also maybe work at one of those three spots that we're talking about. But I kind of think Davila could, especially if, a guy like Jordan Young, who transferred from Cincinnati, if he comes on later on, if, you've got Kenai Walker, the transfer from Oklahoma. Obviously, he started at Oklahoma, good-looking player. Oklahoma's not getting guys that don't look good, so you knew when they signed him he was going to be a good-looking player. But he's a guy that will challenge there. Selman Bridges has been running a lot with the first group, obviously, Snoop, and seen a little bit of Jaheim Singletary as well. That's going to be an interesting competition. I could see it working out where it's like, you've kind of got a three-man deal with Selman Bridges, Young, Walker, maybe Davila if he doesn't end up at the nickel, but he could also, you cross-train guys all over the place. So it'll be interesting to see how they shake all that out. They have run more three linebacker look this spring than I can remember before. Obviously, you got Xavier Sori and you've got Steven Dix at linebacker. But who's your next guy? Tavian Wallace has done some good things. The day one, he didn't jump out to me. I wasn't going he looks good, obviously. If you compare him to Bradley Shaw's a little more stocky, shorter, more filled out. Wallace a little bit longer. He's listed at 6'1", 215. He looks taller. He looks heavier. He looks 6'2", 225, 230 to me personally. But he made some good plays today in the passing game. Again, we're not talking about, thudding up or certainly not tackling. But as far as, looking at guys running around, how athletic they look, can they keep up with the guy that they're covering? How physical are they? How good a communicator, those kinds of things, was what you're looking at. Defensive line, to me, is a little concerning, if I'm being honest right now. Especially not having Cam Ball out there. David Oki, who is a transfer from Abilene Christian, had 62 tackles for them last year. So I just wonder, like, the depth overall. And Danny Saili has lost, what has he lost? Like, he's lost 50 pounds since last year. He was like at 370 or something. And he looks pretty good. You know, he's not exceedingly tall, but very big, obviously, naturally big guy. Ian Gerford, somehow he gained a pound. He's at 389 now. I thought he would probably lose, 20 pounds or so, but no, he's actually gotten a little bit bigger. I'd still like to see him drop some weight. Not saying 50 pounds, that's a lot of weight, but and I feel like they're going to have to go out and get another guy in the transfer portal, and they can do that in the April window. I talked to Larry Worth today. Larry Worth, he was an April guy. Stephen Dix was an April guy. Anthony Switzer, who's not with them anymore, obviously he's out of eligibility, but he was an April guy. So they can get some good players. Danny Saili was an April guy. So they can get some good players, but they need to find somebody at defensive tackle. Defensive end, I'm kind of thinking Quincy Rhodes, kind of thinking Justice Boone right now is your probable starters. They've got some other guys like Ken Talley and Kavion Henderson, who's not exceedingly tall. Charlie Collins, who still needs to add some weight, but Collins was a top 100 prospect coming out of high school. How does he fit in? So if you're asking me like what unit do I feel better about the offense or defense, I think it's been clear right now that I feel a lot better about where they are on offense. Just looking at their personnel, just looking at everybody from an individual standpoint. Okay, this guy could be a weapon, this guy could be reliable for them. I haven't seen that wide receiver yet where I'm just like, there's Andrew Armstrong. There's your next go-to guy. I haven't seen that yet. I think that they have some quality, good wide receivers. Do they have a great one? Do they have a good one? Do they have a really good one? I don't know that yet. And we're going to find out a little bit more, I think, obviously, when they put on pads and such. But right now, I just feel like they have some guys who are going to catch the ball. Are they going to do something outstanding, extraordinary? I'm just not convinced of that yet. If I had to pick a guy who I thought, might make an outstanding play in a game based on what I've seen so far, I'd probably pick Jones, the tight end. I mean, he's looked really good to me. I'm surprised that they were able to get him without much resistance from Montana State. So, I don't know. That's pretty much a recap of everything. I think I've covered most of it. They're going to be relying on some young linebackers. Unless they get somebody out of the transfer portal, which I would like to see them do. They've moved some guys around, in the secondary. Bryce Stevens is over there now. They needed to move a couple of wide receivers, so they've done that. So anyway, this was a good time to do a walk and talk. I don't know if I'll run it during the baseball game, but I'm recording it, so we'll see. But I've had to I've had to keep up my schedule more than any other time because we have had so much access and there's so much to put out. So go to HawgSports if you want more in-depth detail and stuff. Haven't even had time to do a sit-down studio show just because, I've got the radio show. Tomorrow I'll be on for an hour on Wednesday. Wednesday? Will I be on an hour? Yeah, I've got it written down because I can't keep up with it all. So anyway, those are my impressions for the first two practices. Off Wednesday, back at it Thursday. Off Friday, back at it Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, spring break, and then every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday up until April 19th with the Red-White game. All right, everybody, that's it. Appreciate you joining me. One last look at the outside of the stadium. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.